G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is the return, finally, of the Fortnightly check-in series where, briefly, I give you a bit of an idea of how we are tracking and what's coming up ahead on my mental health journey. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give us a rating and share it around with your mates. And you can follow the show on Instagram at thedysregulated.podcast. So the big news to report actually happened today. Today, Elliot returned to work. That's right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the support because Elliot finally is back to work, first time in 2.5 months. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of different ways that we can measure how our mental health is going. And I think if you're able to get to work and do it consistently, that is a good metric to say things are going okay. So today was a big step. It was great to return. It all went pretty well. So that is good news. That is certainly something to build upon. That is for sure. The other big news to report, which I don't know if I've actually said this on the show yet, but I'll go over it briefly, is that the side effects from my new medication, clomipramine, the tricyclic antidepressant from the 50s and 60s, I'm going to do an episode on that soon, don't worry, bit different from your SSRIs. But anyway, that's all I'll say about that for now. But I did have a lot of side effects with this medication, okay? So I had urination issues, I've had what else did I have? I've had potential kidney problems, potential liver problems, but it appears it's all starting to resolve itself. There was a bit of blurry vision and a bit of that going on. A lot of dry mouth, I've got dry mouth right now. But the good news is these side effects, it appears, is starting to clear up, which is good. I'll explain more about the side effects and stuff when I do the episode on tricyclic antidepressants. But the good news is, for me, right now, is that the side effects from clomipramine are starting to resolve themselves, which is great. That's exactly what the psychiatrist and I were hoping would happen, and it is. Because I'm on a pretty high dose of this medication, but it's powerful stuff. And I'll tell you what, it is doing the job. My obsessive, intrusive thoughts that have plagued me for so long, they're just dialed down. Yeah, I would say 80% of those thoughts are getting caught by the clomipramine. And even if they do penetrate, they just go away very quickly. There's still 20% that probably needs a bit of work, but I think to get rid of that, those really sharp 20%ers that are left over, I think that's where the psychology comes into it. But clomipramine is doing a great job, even though there have been some side effects. And that's the thing, it's like a risk-benefit analysis. We got the side effects, but we're not having the intrusive thoughts, which is the more significant of the two. And for me, it's not having those intrusive thoughts. If I have to put up with, standing at the toilet and waiting 5 minutes for me urine to come out, well, you know what? I'd much prefer that than to have those thoughts that I did previously. That is for sure. So that's great news. That is really good news because, I've said before, I've been on over 20 different medications and none of them have really done much, or not much positive anyway. There's been side effects, but not a great deal of the positive stuff. Clomipramine, unfortunately, comes with it with quite a few side effects, but the positive stuff is there too, and it's so great to finally have a medication that is doing what it says it should be doing on the box. It is a great feeling. So I guess the message there is don't give up. There's a lot of meds out there. Hopefully you don't have to try over 20 like I did until I found one that worked, but, we're all different. These medications are all different. It can take a bit of time to really nail down the one for you. So moving ahead, looking forward on my psychological psyche journey, that is exactly what I need to start engaging with again, which is psychological interventions. And I need to see a therapist because unfortunately I've tried to be my own therapist and I'm too easy to just talk over the top of and push out of the way. It's really frustrating. But so I really need to see a psychologist who's got that authority, that objectivity to really say, Elliot, pull your finger out and have a go, mate. Get into it because, it's too easy just to turn that alarm off and roll over or think, I should do some meditation. But So I need to get back into therapy and have that level of accountability. And that's why therapists are so important. People say often, I go see a psychologist and, they just tell me stuff I already know. What's the point? It's like, yeah, it's not about necessarily the stuff they tell you. It's the fact that they have that level of authority, objectivity, and they can tell you, things maybe you already know, but in a way that holds you accountable. And that is definitely the next step as far as my journey goes. But before I could do that, I needed to get back to work because all this stuff costs money. But the good news is now that I'm back at work, we can start getting back into the psychology because the pharmacology stuff, the clomipramine, the tricyclic antidepressant, is doing a pretty good job. But, when you're dealing with things like personality disorders and stuff like that with me, psychological interventions are so important. So that is the next step, but that is coming in the new year, and I'm very excited for that. I also do have a referral sitting at Maitland Private Hospital for a return because I wasn't sure the clomipramine was doing the job, and I sort of wanted to go back and see if we could add something else or maybe mix it up. But the last week and a half, 2 weeks, like I said, the clomipramine has really kicked into gear. So I'm now questioning whether I need to actually go back to hospital or if we can do some adjustments out in the community with my GP. That would be really good because, I'm sort of enjoying not being confined to the hospital. I can actually go out and do my own thing, run my own race, that freedom. I never knew how much I valued freedom until I was sort of, put in, stayed at the hospital and, although it was voluntary, of course, let me just make that point clear. But at the same time, I had to be there, to get the results that we seem to be getting today, which is great. So I don't know. I just don't know if maybe I don't need to go back. And if not, that is a great, great win because I didn't expect that. But I'm telling you, the last 2 weeks, even 3 weeks, we've seen some big improvements, which is awesome. Coming up on the podcast, I'll tell you what, I'm very excited to start this DBT series. I've got a few of the techniques down pat, and I'm ready to tell you all about them. And I'll tell you what, it will be good because, these techniques and skills from dialectical behavior therapy, even if you don't have a personality disorder or you don't have depression or whatever, these skills are just great for anybody who has to contend with day-to-day life. That, again, some of it is reasonably basic, but you listen to it and think, okay, that's an easy concept. I should be able to understand that and I should be doing it. But then you think to yourself, am I actually doing this though? It's so simple, so easy, but are we actually engaging and doing this technique or this skill or whatever it is? And usually the answer is no. So even if you're not depressed or you don't have borderline personality, which is what DBT was set up for, it doesn't really matter because these are just great life skills that we can all appreciate and get something from. So I'm really excited because, a lot of this podcast has been about my story and a lot of it's been a bit doom and gloom. But there is a lot of positivity to report, and I want to start reporting a bit more of that. And I think this DBT series is going to be a good stepping stone of that because it's not so much about me, which is good, and it's more about equipping you guys with the skills and techniques and the knowledge and the empowerment to be able to improve your lives. And if anyone gets anything out of this DBT series and it helps, that would be an amazing achievement. I'd be so proud. So hopefully I will get that up and running very, very soon because I am very excited about it. And the podcast, I think, is about to take a bit of a shift towards the positive because there is a lot of positivity to report, but it gets lost a bit in my story and a lot of it's negative. So, I want to try and pivot the show a little bit towards the positive because that's what it's all about. There is a lot of positivity to report. So let's start reporting on it. All right, that'll do for now. I've got a family Christmas dinner thing to go and enjoy, so that will be fun. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas if I don't get an episode out before Christmas. If anyone feels like they are alone at Christmas and there's no one to talk to, I'm telling you, I'm serious. Send me a message on the podcast Instagram page because I'm going to be online on Christmas. If anyone feels like, they're a bit lonely and things aren't going their way and, I'm telling you, send me a message. I'll reply. I promise. All right. Well, that's all from me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. That was a nice little quick episode just about what's been going on. Lots of positivity to report, which is so exciting. It's so amazing. Thank you, clomipramine, and all the hard work that I've been doing. I'm going to tell you all about that soon as well. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a very Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you soon. See you later. Bye-bye.